The deal that changed Hollywood forever. What if the golden age of Hollywood, the era of dazzling stars, red carpet premieres, and blockbuster legends, wasn't just powered by dreams and talent, but by fear, blackmail, and blood money? Behind the glitz and glamour, behind every spotlighted starlet and every booming studio lot, lurked a silent war. Not between actors and directors, but between mob bosses, studio heads, and the unions meant to protect the workers. It was a twisted triangle of power, corruption, and control. And those who stepped out of line? They disappeared. Or worse. For decades, the public believed Hollywood was immune to the underworld, that the mob ran Vegas, New York, Chicago, but not Los Angeles. But the truth was darker than any noir film ever produced. The same men who ordered hits on street corners were now calling the shots in production meetings, deciding who got paid and who got played. And the studios? Many weren't just complicit, they were terrified. This isn't a simple tale of old Hollywood corruption. It's a story of extortion on a million-dollar scale, of unions hijacked from the inside, of secret meetings, bugged hotel rooms, and accidents that raised too many questions. And at the center of it all, a deal so dark, it changed Hollywood forever. During the Prohibition era, the mob's influence spread like wildfire, bootlegging liquor, running speakeasies, and lining their pockets with dirty cash. But by the 1930s, they had their eyes on a more glamorous prize, Hollywood. While stars partied in the hills, the mafia was moving into town, not just as party guests, but as puppet masters. And they didn't need cameras to make someone famous. They needed leverage. Enter Bugsy Siegel. A notorious figure already entrenched in organized crime, Siegel wasn't just a gangster. He was a businessman. And Hollywood was good business. He made friends with celebrities, threw lavish parties in Beverly Hills, and mingled with producers as easily as he did with hitmen. His associate, Mickey Cohen, followed close behind, flamboyant, violent, and always looking to expand territory. Together they made Los Angeles their new playground. But they weren't there to make movies. They were there to muscle in on profits, especially through the unions. The mob saw Hollywood as soft, rich, bloated, and largely unprotected. And the moment they realized studios would pay anything to avoid shutdowns or scandal, they smelled opportunity. The Dream Factory had a weak spot, and the mob was ready to exploit it. As the film industry boomed in the 1930s and 40s, thousands of workers flooded into Hollywood. Carpenters, set painters, camera operators, each one vital to keeping the dream machine running. To protect themselves, they formed powerful unions. But power, left unchecked, is always a target. And soon, these unions weren't just protecting workers. They were being used to shake down the studios. The International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, better known as IATSE, was one of the most influential unions in Hollywood. And when Chicago mobsters George Brown and Willie Beoff gained control of it, the game changed. Beoff, a former pimp and street hustler, became the face of Hollywood extortion. He threatened studio shutdowns unless they paid up, and they did. Millions of dollars were funneled to the Chicago outfit, all under the guise of labor peace. What made it so dangerous was the silence. Everyone knew the unions were being manipulated, but no one dared speak up. The fear of violent retaliation wasn't just a rumor, it was a reality. Workers who resisted lost jobs or vanished. Studio heads faced the threat of boycotts and strikes timed to sabotage major productions. And those who refused to play ball? Let's just say their movies never made it to theaters. The unions were supposed to be a shield. But under mob control, they became a weapon. Behind closed doors, the studio moguls, the so-called kings of Hollywood, were anything but powerful. Men like Louis B. Mayer, Darryl Zanuck, and Harry Cohn found themselves cornered by men with no interest in Oscars or premieres. The mob didn't care about box office numbers. They cared about control, and the unions gave them the perfect lever. It started quietly. A threat here, a bribe there. Then came the shutdowns, timed perfectly to tank productions and cost studios millions. Producers had no choice. Pay up or lose everything. Paramount, MGM, Warner Brothers. No one was immune. They wrote checks, handed over envelopes stuffed with cash, and hoped it would all go away. But it never did. The more they paid, the more the mob wanted. Louis B. Mayer, head of MGM, was known for being a titan of the industry. But even he couldn't protect his studio from the threat of mob-backed labor strikes. Behind his polished image and cigar-chomping bravado was a man walking a tightrope. Rumors circulated that Mayer received personal threats, delivered not by mail, but by men in dark suits who never gave their names. He wasn't alone. Some producers tried to push back. One even attempted to hire private security to counter union pressure. That man was later hospitalized after a random mugging outside his home. No arrests were ever made. In the end, even Hollywood's most powerful bowed to the silent force pressing in from the shadows. The deeper the mob sank its teeth into Hollywood, the more violent things became. And when secrets risked spilling into public view, the cleanup was brutal. In 1943, Willie Beoff, the same man who'd squeezed millions from the studios, agreed to testify against his former associates. It was supposed to be the end of the extortion ring, but it was only the beginning of something darker. After serving time, Beoff tried to live a quiet life under a new name in Arizona. That ended the day he started his car, and it exploded into flames. Investigators called it a mob hit. Others called it a message: if you talk, you die. His death sent shockwaves through Hollywood. Executives and union leaders alike understood the warning. The message wasn't just for snitches, it was for anyone thinking about crossing the line. Other mysterious deaths followed. A union organizer found drowned in a pool with no signs of struggle. A labor reporter hit by a car in a so-called accident. And a Teamsters informant vanished on his way to a federal meeting, never seen again. These weren't coincidences. They were cleanup jobs, quiet enough to escape front-page headlines, but loud enough to keep everyone in line. The violence wasn't always physical either. Careers were destroyed, contracts blacklisted, and families threatened. In Hollywood, silence became survival. And for many, the only way out was 6 feet under. As the 1950s rolled in, one name started dominating labor circles across the country: Jimmy Hoffa. Charismatic, ruthless, and impossibly well-connected, Hoffa brought the Teamsters Union to unprecedented power. While his focus began with truckers and freight workers, it didn't take long for him to recognize the potential in Hollywood logistics. Movie sets required massive transportation, lights, cameras, props, stages, and the Teamsters began controlling every truck, every driver, every delivery. That meant Hoffa, and by extension the mob, had new leverage over studios. Want your film equipment delivered on time? Better stay in line. Want your set cleared by Friday? Pay up or don't bother rolling cameras. Under Hoffa's reign, the Teamsters became one of the most feared unions in the industry. And their involvement didn't stop with trucks. They branched into production security, location access, even personal bodyguards for stars. The lines between legitimate labor and organized crime blurred completely. Hoffa made friends in high places. Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and other Rat Pack members were known to socialize with him. Some said he protected them, others whispered he used them. One thing was certain: no one got in or out of the business without his shadow watching. Even after Hoffa's mysterious disappearance in 1975, the foundation he built in Hollywood never fully vanished. The Teamsters had carved out a seat at the table, and no one dared take it away. For most stars, Hollywood was a dream machine. But for a few, it became a nightmare once they got too close to the power players pulling the strings. The mob's fingerprints weren't just on the contracts and union negotiations. They were all over the personal lives of the people we now call legends. Take Frank Sinatra. His ties to the mob have been documented for decades. Some say he was just a friend, others say he was a fixer. Sinatra was linked to figures like Sam Giancana and Lucky Luciano, and even reportedly helped arrange meetings between studio heads and union bosses to keep the peace. But peace came with a price. Sinatra's career was nearly derailed when rumors about his mob ties started making headlines. The FBI opened a file. Journalists dug deeper. But somehow, the truth always remained just out of reach. Marilyn Monroe was another icon caught in the web. In private conversations, she allegedly confided that she believed her phone was tapped and that she was being followed. Some chalked it up to paranoia. But after her death, several reports surfaced suggesting she had learned too much, not just about politicians, but about Hollywood's criminal underbelly. Theories swirled that her relationships with both the Kennedys and certain mob figures put her in a dangerous position. Then there was Judy Garland, America's sweetheart. Behind her wide-eyed innocence was a woman who knew too much. She reportedly resisted joining certain union campaigns and later confided to friends that she feared retaliation. Her spiral into addiction and mental breakdowns wasn't just personal, it was possibly connected to the enormous pressure of navigating a studio system that answered to more than just producers. These weren't isolated cases. Plenty of lesser-known actors and actresses who tried to speak out about corruption or refused mob-backed deals found themselves blacklisted, broke, or worse. In the shadows of the spotlight, fame offered no protection. By the late 1950s, the FBI could no longer ignore what was happening in Hollywood. Too many coincidental deaths, too many anonymous payments, too many mobsters vacationing in Beverly Hills. Under J. Edgar Hoover's direction, the Bureau launched several covert investigations into the link between organized crime and the entertainment industry. One of the biggest was Project Top Hat, a classified operation designed to expose labor racketeering and mob extortion inside America's biggest studios. FBI agents bugged hotel suites, wiretapped phones, and planted informants inside union offices and studio accounting departments. What they uncovered was explosive. Conversations recorded in Los Angeles and Las Vegas revealed studio executives negotiating with mob intermediaries. One wiretap captured a studio accountant arranging protection fees to be sent to a Chicago address. Another featured a union boss threatening a producer with a surprise strike unless demands were met, demands tied directly to a known mob front. But exposing the truth wasn't easy. Hollywood's biggest names had expensive lawyers and public relations teams that knew how to spin a story. More importantly, fear kept many insiders from cooperating. FBI reports from the era describe witnesses too afraid to testify and expressing concern for their families. One high-level informant was placed in witness protection after his tip led to an arrest. The next week, his car was found burned outside his mother's house. The investigations continued for years, resulting in several arrests and public hearings. But despite the evidence, few major players faced long-term consequences. The web was too complex, the money too deep, and the secrets too damaging. The files remained sealed for decades, but when they finally surfaced, they confirmed what many had suspected all along. The mob wasn't just involved in Hollywood, they were embedded in it. By the 1970s, the public was tired of corruption. Senate hearings on organized crime brought figures like Anthony, Tony Duck's Corallo, and Jimmy Hoffa's associates into the spotlight. Testimonies revealed the extent of mob influence in unions across America, including the entertainment industry. Willie Beoff's murder, Hoffa's disappearance, and a string of arrests had seemingly broken the old guard. Hollywood tried to clean house. New labor leaders promised reform. Studios distanced themselves from anyone tied to racketeering. The government enacted stricter oversight of union elections and financial dealings. On the surface, the mob's grip on the industry was broken. But insiders tell a different story. Rather than vanishing, organized crime evolved. Instead of labor unions, they moved into private film financing, talent management, and shell companies that funded big-budget productions. Money laundering through independent film projects became a common practice. The lines between investor and criminal blurred as shady money quietly financed some of the biggest hits of the 80s and 90s. Former union leaders resurfaced as consultants. Former mobsters rebranded as producers. And while the FBI's heat faded, the influence never truly left. To this day, whispers remain about certain film investors with untraceable money, and about major studio decisions influenced by silent partners who never appear on credit rolls. Hollywood, it seemed, didn't end its relationship with the mob. It just gave it a new name, a new suit, and a new desk on the lot. The golden age of Hollywood was paved with red carpets, champagne toasts, and shadows no one wanted to talk about. The mob didn't just flirt with the industry. They embedded themselves deep within it. From union halls to studio backrooms, their influence touched every deal, every paycheck, every scream queen and studio boss. This wasn't a story of temporary corruption. It was a full-blown takeover, carefully disguised behind glamour and stardust. And while names like Bugsy Siegel, Jimmy Hoffa, and Willie Bioff may be gone, their legacy lingers in the silence of those who are still afraid to speak. Because the real currency of Hollywood has never just been money, it's been secrets. And those who held them held power. The cameras kept rolling, the stars kept shining. But behind every smiling face was someone watching from the shadows, someone who made sure the show went on, no matter what.